Good to be back here, T.
Indeed, indeed.
The Grateful Dead we're now covering now.
How many episodes in are we?
Second episode.
This is number 2. All right.
We started off with witches. Now we're going off to the Grateful Dead.
Cool, cool. Welcome, welcome. I'm Thaddeus, and
This is Che.
it's good to be here.
When I was at the store, I was in Winn-Dixie a couple of months ago, and I saw this Rolling Stone magazine of the Grateful Dead. And what I found interesting about the magazine was that it said it was a complete guide to the Grateful Dead. Everything you need to know if you aspire to be a Deadhead, this would be the magazine for you to visit.
Neat.
And I remember when I first heard about the Grateful Dead, it was my brother who introduced me to the Grateful Dead. I heard the name before. I never knew what the band was. And this was when my brother was living in Denver, Colorado. And whenever I would visit him, we loved going on hikes, and we went to the Flatirons. And when we left, it was already nightfall. So we got to Denver, and it was night. But the entire ride, we would take turns. I would play music from my playlist, music from his playlist, and he had a playlist that was just on shuffle, and the majority of the songs were the Grateful Dead. And I told him, this band's pretty good. And so I recognized some of these tunes. Who are they? And he said, this is the Grateful Dead. I'm like, really? Because I know some of these tunes were played by other artists. He says, no, this is the Grateful Dead. This is their style. It's like, so this is like, it sounds like, sometimes it was jazzy, sometimes it was bluesy, sometimes it was rock, sometimes it was a combination of all three. And that was my brother introducing me to the Grateful Dead. Ever since I just loved their music. I started listening to them. I started adding their hits to my playlist whenever I would do work. Usually I would listen to classical music, but sometimes I like to take a departure and listen to jazz or something else. And Grateful Dead I've been listening to since, I guess, 2019.
Neat.
What about you, T?
Forever, and there's so many obscure, like, lengthy live jams. It's there's a lot out there.
When you heard of the Grateful Dead, so when you were a kid, they were already popular. They were already in the groove.
I remember that, but I also remember, like, in the 90s, early 90s, maybe even the late 80s, this dude named Brian Pallmeyer, he was always playing, these obscure tracks from live shows, and that got me tuned into, like, oh, it's just not a 3.5 minute song and another 2-minute song, and you know what I'm saying? There's so many jams.
That's the thing, is they were a jam band. They're best known for being able to just play it out and surprise you with whatever tunes they got next. And when I read this magazine, and I strongly recommend that you read this magazine. It's Rolling Stone magazines of the Grateful Dead. I have the picture of it on this video.
Cool.
And I found out that, well, what I read is that the Grateful Dead were the first to make it to the cover of Rolling Stone magazine.
Wow.
Yeah, and the great thing about this magazine is just it covers different aspects of the Grateful Dead. It's including a interview with Jerry Garcia. A really good interview because the way how he narrates it, I can't even cover the whole magazine on this podcast, but if you really want to know, basis, the meaning of the, not meaning of the Grateful Dead, but the basis of the Grateful Dead, how they basically got together, what the point of their music was, their experiences, all that in Jerry Garcia's interview. However, the magazine does have an introduction by Bob Weir, one of the band members.
Okay.
Now I'm just going to summarize what he said, and I will quote also what he said. We could hear and feel each other thinking, and we could feel each other into each other's moves readily. Our vocal blend was at its peak too. Jerry Garcia, keyboard player, Brett Mindlin, and I individually reached new plateaus as singers, and we were all singing together. It was pretty strong. We packed a punch there was a lot of electricity going on stage besides the stuff that was plugged in after a while. And tour, we established a sort of route we take every year. It got to be a kind of routine, but the music kept us on our toes. They had to stop for a while. When I read that, he was basically describing what it was when they played together. When you were with Lo Presher, does anything that he just said kind of resonates when you guys performed? When you guys, even when you were recording?
Yeah, for sure. You feel the sync and you feel the look ahead, and it's weird, you know, because cool stuff comes out on the fly in the flow state, and yeah, when you're locked in and you're got a thing going on with some, you know, got a beat going or whatever, some heat going with other music types, it's magic.
It is. It feels like magic just by reading it. I've never played in a personal band before. I was in a band in middle school, but I never played in a band. I was never with that sort of group before, so I wouldn't know. Like, I don't think I can ever, personally feel that experience. But the way how he just described it, there was some sort of unity behind it all, and knowing that you're a part of that unity.
And they were so hot; their chops were probably fire, and he's probably super literal that they were like together, even though they're, blurring it.
Well, that's the thing. Like, that is just one slight introduction to the feeling of being part of that band. He also said that, quote, that when Jerry Garcia passed away, he wrote that he missed what we did together and he wanted that back. That's what he was going for. When he checked out, he was aggressive about cleaning up and his body couldn't handle it. The fact that was the one that, according to Bob Weir, this was what motivated Jerry to go to rehab, to get that feeling back, that there was something beyond other toxic substances. There was this harmonial feeling, this family feeling that is way above the other things that we take. In other words, the chemical releases in our brain that makes us feel happy about it, helps us feel just, at the top of our game. The higher one it is, the feeling of family, feeling of being loved, feeling of being part of something. And the fact that according to Weir, that he went to rehab to get himself cleaned up because he wanted to get back to that, just shows not just how much of a force the Grateful Dead had with each other, but it also shows that in the end, no matter what hole a person tries to fill in their body with whatever they consume, in the end, it can never replace that very amazing feeling of being part, of being love, of having an identity that's based of a collective that's all in agreement
and sustainable and all that. Yep.
I mean, when you guys formed your band Lo Presher,
yeah, I'd say so, and especially since we did so much jamming together, 100% in the studio, in rehearsal, and playing live. I remember, all those moments, a bunch of moments where it's like one time we were playing in Daytona, and I don't know if you ever done this, but you ever used to be like you walk into a club or walk into somewhere and you hear like a song and you go, wow, what is that? And it moves you, and you just love what you hear right away. I started getting some of that, and I was like, wow, this song sounds really cool, and I go, what is this? And I kind of snapped out of it, and I was like, and I saw that we were in the middle of a jam on stage. I was like, wow, it's us. That's cool,
So you became entranced by your own performances as you were playing.
Yeah, it was cool.
Did it strike you even more positively by the fact that when you realized that you, in fact, were the ones creating that sound?
It did, because it's cool when you hear something new and you vibe with it. But hearing like what you said, you hear something, you vibe with it, and you go, oh, that's right here, right now. That's cool. It's different.
Did you guys have an underlying theme, or did you have different points to points to express in your music?
I think we had a lot of different points, and if we had underlying themes, it was probably something that just bubbled up naturally. But as far as like the genre and the style, we didn't have like a sound. I think we were exploring, trying to, have as much fun as possible, and then find out what diggles our daggle when we write it, and maybe inflate that, and then go here and explore this and other way or genre or whatever. But I don't think we had like anything that was intentional. But we could read the lyrics and talk to everybody and root up a vibe that way. But no, not above the board. We didn't all say, let's, we're doing this, or we're writing these kind of messages, or we did not do that on purpose.
So it wasn't like we're going to create a band to push a certain message that's recurrent. It was more it's like, would you say you guys were experimenting with different messages and different styles as you were crafting songs?
Yes, and as someone who has always written a lot and poems and stuff and songs, it was like next level vibing that with other musicians that were into it, and we're gelling it that lifted whatever I had on my own, it lifted it up with everybody else, and it just kind of we were just I suppose 4 artists become one and jam so much together and hung out so much together that we got that gooey heat, that heat and that spontaneity and that sense of like wonder, hopefully from looking at the band playing it or hearing the music. But we felt it, hanging out together, practicing together, cutting albums was expression, kind of box in for our eras, and what music we were all grew up in, the gravy of rock and roll and all the other stuff.
I once read that the theme of a piece of art is the identity of the work of art. I can't agree with that at all, because I believe that art is as complicated as personality. I think that there's multiple identities that are influenced by various archetypes in our psyche. And art has that as well. It's multidimensional.
I totally agree.
Well, from what you're telling me, there are various dimensions of your band's identity.
And you could maybe
of the band's identity. I'm sorry. It was
no
a
worries.
wholesome thing.
Sometimes we would do stuff like the challenge of write it in a different way, maybe a different genre, and but give everybody like rough parameters. Say, let's see what we can create with this kind of vibe, or and we did stuff like with electronic music, and the rock music, but we got to mix them together and just challenge ourselves to write. I guess I'm thinking about what you said about like not having everything all framed up already. Just say we're gonna write a song like in this vein, and let's do it now, and let's get it hot, and just kind of it would make things happen that might not have happened otherwise, and it felt real gooey and spontaneous, and that's cool.
Basically, all of you were on this. You're taking an impromptu artistic journey. You're just seeing where it was going to go.
Yes.
Where you were going.
Yeah, and we give ourselves, like if we're trying to, make an album, we probably more than double up on the number of songs that we want to throw up and be like, that's on the front burner, this is a maybe, what about this one? And we pushed ourselves into like you got to finish it by this time. So that's a cool aspect of just saying, yeah, you got to finish it. And it kind of makes you say, yeah, we are going to, these tracks we got, the vibes we got, that's what's going to coalesce and become something.
I think the drafting part, or the trying out different things and deciding which should be a go, which should be shelf, is an important part of discovering what will be the motif of your man. I mean, I read about J.D. Salinger when he died, and they found his writings organized by things that incomplete works that are organized by things that he might publish, I think, or things that he will never have out, or things that are just ideas. I think that it's good to toy and experiment, to see what exactly you're trying to express and see what works, what fits. Kind of like, sketches, exactly. They're sketches. Or the playwright Tom Stoppard, famous for the play The Real Thing, or Travesties, or Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are Dead. He wrote Shakespeare in Love, a famous writer. And in an interview, he said he does the same thing, that he would usually try to work on something. He would write something, but once he runs out of ideas and he doesn't know where he's going with it, he sets it down. He doesn't come back to it until it comes back to him.
And what was the piano thing where you riff together some of your progressions and you're kind of riffing, but you're trying progressions that starts with the E?
I know what you're talking about. It's Etude, studies in French.
Kind of like the sketch. You're flowing through it, feeling it. Yeah.
Etudes, trying out different tunes, but it's not something that they would be seriously composing. Of course, they eventually get published. Chopin, for example, his etudes are popular as well. They're still played to this day. But yeah, even musicians have that.
It's kind of like those the writings that sit over on the side and aren't part of something, but they're just doing them and going through the motions makes you creative, and it keeps you like snappy.
Well, going back with the Grateful Dead, because when we're talking about it too, we're talking about figuring out what works and what doesn't when a beginning artist or a beginning group of artists want to present the world what they have to offer in their talents. It brings me back to that to the conclusion of the introduction to the magazine that Weir was writing.
Okay.
He said that he recalled giving a stranger a ride, and he brought him to his ranch, or as he called it, a self-imposed dust bowl of a ranch, and he got him to stack wood. He found out that the guy was an artist, that the stranger that was helping him stack wood was an artist, and he would do tie-dye shirts.
Which were new at the time.
Exactly, and he even said, quote, it wasn't something people knew about at the time, end quote. It was completely new. And the band members came around the ranch, and they saw the tie-dye work of this stranger. And they said that they could drape the tie-dye work over the amps and dress up the stage.
Yeah.
That was basically the Grateful signature. That was a mark that that they placed for their band. And he concluded that certain people need adventure in their lives, that there's a need an adventure in their music. Well, I say there's a need adventure for any artist, an adventure of the mind. It's imagination versus experience. You put those together, and you have a formulation of expression. It is what your thoughts, your ideas, your expectations are versus what you're going through, and then you articulate it, whether in music or in writing.
And they did it live.
They did it
just
live,
flowy over and over. That's a footnote, just so I put this out there. Lo Presher, Pebble, Grateful Dead, Mountain, Respect.
Indeed. No, we're not saying that. That's the underlying distinction.
Yeah.
Isaac Newton said when he was giving credit to his work, he said that we're standing on the shoulders of giants, that they were among the great inspirations to the rock music we knew. I mean, Jerry Garcia even said that. Even they did not know where they were going. He basically said that in his interview.
Did I hear you say that he also said that towards the end that he was especially about using his voice and appreciating the human voice?
Yes, he did.
Okay.
As a matter of fact, see if I can recollect. See, because it all started when he got an offer to play at a radio station. He said this at the interview. See, he said that it all started when he and Phil were working for KPFA. This is when he was he was living in Palo Alto, and Phil was working as an engineer, and Jerry was doing work as a folk singer. He was doing folk singing gigs, and they wanted Jerry to do a show as a folk singer on the radio station. So Jerry and Phil got together to put a tape of Jerry playing in the kitchen, which turned out to be so good that not only Phil and Jerry, but also guys at the radio station wanted it. Phil engineered the performance. As a result, this was got Jerry to organize a band. Now, he also said, though, that he wanted to form a band. He thought that it was interesting. What he found interesting about their foundations were the different characteristics of the band's formation. Because it started off with him being offered to sing, because before he got the gig, the offer to sing, he would do folk singing at different places. He and his friend, previously he said that they basically were making very little money. The money they would make would basically be from either singing at bars or coffee places or giving music lessons at record stores.
School of Hard Knocks.
And they would live in non-functioning cars. They would live in those things, and they would eat canned pineapples. And when they kept plastic forks in the glove compartment, so they were. That's where they started, and they slowly kept at their craft. And I would say that Jerry, as a musician and an artist, he was determined to explore his art, to not because, one would say you should get a job if you're living in your car. I mean, and only eating canned pineapples that you get at your old military base. Because Jerry was at one time in the military. He even said that when he was a kid, he wanted an electric guitar, but his mother bought him an accordion, and he pawned the accordion to get an electric guitar. This spells out the determination of Jerry Garcia. Showed how into he was. He knew what kind of music he wanted to play, and he also was open to exploring where his passion would take him. And he kept at it. And he went from, living in a car to basically getting a gig at the radio to forming a band. And
feeling people getting psyched about it.
I don't know, the thing is, I bet he got psyched about it when, it was all coming together.
He got re-psyched because he started the seed of the psych, and then he shared it, and they're like, wow, we feel that. And he's like, you do? And then, yeah.
Well, no, because he was just one part of the group. He was one characteristic. He described Bob Weir as he was brought up upper class. He had kicked out of schools, given a hard time, but he had aspirations to play the guitar and hanging out in the music store, which is where he met Jerry Garcia. It's two similar personalities, but of different backgrounds, two different storylines. They meet, and something great comes out of it. Kurtzman was also a kid from high school. He met Jerry at the music store, selling Jerry a banjo. Pigpen, Jerry Garcia identified as the Elvis Presley soul, that he had love for the blues and he had aspirations to play the blues. Oddly, the thing is that there was a short supply of the kind of band that Jerry wanted to do. There was a short supply of a folk song bluegrass band. That's what they're aiming for. And it was Pigpen's idea, according to Jerry, to have the band go electric, an electric blue band. Different souls, different characteristics, found in instruments, yet one homogeneous passion. It wasn't the first time it happened with bands, but the circumstances never cease to amaze. They were of different characteristics, of different passions for instruments and different preferences in music, but together they explored and tried out new things. They were a jamming band, but they were also open to change.
And they were in the heart, like in the early part of not only do we got all this mixed together, but we have this new thing, relatively new thing, the electric guitar, whose sounds had not been explored thoroughly or exploited real hard, and so that's all fresh and new to them. Yeah, it must have been inspiring.
What's even more inspiring is the fact that their journey, like the journey of most practical artists, is that their development, which is the journey itself, was all about. Not really what we want to be, but let's see what we're going to be.
Get into the fire, come out molded.
Who would have known that when they're playing at a pizza parlor, when they're playing a gig at the pizza parlor as a jam band, that according to Jerry, there were like 300 or 400 people, high schoolers, that would, on the third day of playing at that pizza parlor, they were all there freaking out of their rock and roll skills. There's not a band that they were playing. They were playing something familiar, but in a new mode, rock and roll blues.
And they had great timing.
Exactly, they had great time. It was like they got there at the right time.
Timing.
When I was reading through the magazine, I was wondering if they explain what's the meaning behind the Grateful Dead. Where they got the word from the Grateful Dead. Jerry said, I'm going to quote what he said in the interview.
Okay.
He said, "We never decided to be the Grateful Dead. What happened was the Grateful Dead came up as a suggestion because we were at Phil's house one day and he had a big Oxford dictionary. I opened it up and the first thing I saw was the Grateful Dead." They took a liking to that phrase.
Fate.
Yeah, it was fate. He said, it said on that page, and it was astonishing. It was truly weird, a truly weird moment. I didn't like it, really. I just found it really powerful. Weird didn't like it. Kurtzman didn't like it. And nobody really wanted to hear about it. But then people started calling us that, and it just started. It just got out. Grateful Dead, Grateful Dead. We sort of became the Grateful Dead because we heard there was another band called Warlocks. We had about 2 or 3 months of no name, and we were trying to figure things out. Different names, and nothing quite fit. So that's basically, according to Jerry, how Grateful Dead became their name. They just saw something, and it looked interesting, and it just stuck to them. Now, the interesting thing is that the Grateful Dead, what I read about that term, Grateful Dead, is that in the I would say go far as the olden times, ancient times, when a person died, they had to be buried. Because the purpose of being buried is that the animals, the scavengers, won't go after your body. But if there's no one to pay for a burial, they just leave the body there. So they say any passerby sees a dead body, nobody there to bury it. They do the courtesy of burying the body so animals won't go after the dead body. You're doing the courtesy of burying a dead body, and that becomes that the dead person becomes the Grateful Dead. Appreciated that the dead body is given recognition and given a proper burial by some stranger.
Okay, that makes sense.
Now if we were to take it to see, just for a moment to say, okay, fine, they picked the name Grateful Dead randomly. Let's say that there was no intentional selection, that they did not go by the name Grateful Dead for a symbolic meaning. Like you called yourselves Lo Presher.
I think Jimmy said one time it's kind of like the signature. I think he said it's like a signature of divine creator. It's also the path of least resistance. When you see that low pressure from a satellite, or you see it in the Dust Devil, or you see it anywhere, just diffusion and torsional. But anyways, like a common, sign that's, mysterious and kind of gorks you out, but happens everywhere.
When I listen to Lo Presher, I feel nothing but, relaxation. The electric guitar sounds ethereal. Tiny bit of Pink Floyd strums.
Cool.
And the spirit of Red Hot Chili Peppers. There's no definite heavy influence. There's just this amalgamation of different spirits aligned. If you guys are, those of you listening, if you're interested in a analysis of Lo Presher's song, we can do it. Just put it in the comments, expressing if you want to.
And we got some old stuff that we've been pulling off archives and, old tape and stuff. And I got some tracks that we're going to share, and I can't wait to share with you. And they're pretty gooey because it's a lot of studio jamming kind of stuff. It's cool.
Awesome. And for more information on Lo Presher, it should be in the podcast description.
Yeah, and go to VibeFarmer.com.
And also go to VibeFarmer.com. That's T's website. All the info you need from T, just go to VibeFarmer.com, also in the video description.
Yes, big thanks.
But to go back to the Grateful Dead. So now let's say that the name Grateful Dead was just randomly chosen, as Jerry Garcia said. So they just picked a name and it went along. And like you said, they're going to rock. So whatever name they picked, it was going to rock.
But because they're so special on the timeline, like some, just an anomaly of talent and goodness, it makes sense that they would just a one-page flip in the dictionary and be like, that name, and it's all super sticky. It's because the put together that made that phenomenon called the Grateful Dead, it wasn't normal. And all those little coincidences and stuff lining up is because it was a great thing.
Oh, no, and
notable.
Nothing was really, when it comes to its identity, nothing was really structured. They developed as they added things along, like the tie-dye shirts. They built up their image as they learned what fits and what doesn't fit.
Flowy.
It was flowy. It was part of the journey. It was subject to change. And that was the great thing, and I think that's the most natural of any personality, that personalities are not predestined. Personalities are bound to change because their environment changes them, and environments can change as well. What I was getting about the band name is that what I just said about the Grateful Dead, about the person bearing the dead body, and they become the Grateful Dead. If we were to make a connection behind the meaning, now it would be pointless to make a connection behind the meaning in the phrase the Grateful Dead, because again, it was basically a random choice. But if one were to make a connection what the band was, because
if you were a rock detective, you'd be like, that's not a coincidence,
but again, I can easily, I'll give you an example, okay? I can say, well, the Grateful Dead has to do with burying a dead body that's not been buried, and when the dead body has been buried, they're the Grateful Dead. They are appreciative that they've been put to rest. Well, the Grateful Dead is known for being a jamming band, a band known for playing rock blues music, and they develop as the years pass, playing very popular tunes in their own upbeat fashion. And as they progress, they've also changed their style of music. Well, one may say that the famous tunes that they play in their rock blues fashion, they are paying tribute to the classics. They're playing tribute to the tunes that have already been known and have already been played, but in their own way, that they are paying tribute to the dead. They're showing respect to the dead. That right there, what I just said, can be a simple made-up argument. It can sound even true if I argue it well.
It's such a easy. Okay, we're deep diving, but since it turned out to be such a sticky phrase, a sticky set of words, and also like easy to intuit different meanings and all that, it's just so sticky. It has the word dead in it, has the word grateful in it. It's and this band is all like, what? Y'all are what? So it's just so like it almost tells you with the name to get ready to play it loose when you hear this band.
But the other thing, it has that, if I may, not to go to extremes, but it has a psychological effect.
Oh, we're in the extremes.
Well, the title has two words with contrasting connotations.
That diggles your daggle.
You have grateful and dead. Words are different with a negative and a positive connotation as a band name.
It's great, huh?
It is great. Now imagine a person never read that Jerry Garcia interview, and they decide to say what I just said about explaining the meaning behind the Grateful Dead, to explain about, driving that connection. And you feel sure about yourself and you say, yeah, that's why they're called the Grateful Dead, because they're paying tribute to old classics or classic music. Because I know, for example, when I listened to the Grateful Dead, one of the first tunes I heard them play, they played the to Turn On Your Love Light. They played a famous Irish song, Whiskey in the Jar. They played other famous tunes. So again, let's say a person says, oh, they're called the Grateful Dead because they're paying tribute to the old songs, popular songs. And then you read the Jerry Garcia interview and said, oh no, it was just picked randomly.
But let's just say that it was one reason it was great name, no matter what, is because it was user friendly and they could throw their thing on it and be like, okay.
But what works great is that it fits very well. So in the end, even if that dispenses that educated analysis, that analysis behind the name, even though what Jerry Garcia just basically cancels out that analysis, it doesn't make any change.
Kind of, though, because they're, that's some free thinking, I don't know, maybe they wanted to vacillate a little bit.
But that's what makes it great, because even though Garcia said that they just found it in a dictionary, at the same time, what they do is, in a way, paying tribute to. So even if Garcia...
That's why they're an anomaly, because all that, and that's not a coincidence.
If anything, the analysis says that what amazing coincidence that they picked the Grateful Dead, because they ended up being a band renowned for amazing gigs where they played their rendition of popular tunes, as well as their own tunes.
Destiny.
And their destiny based on where their journey was going to take them. Again, they had no idea about the tie-dyes until they saw that stranger's artwork, and they said, we're going to put this on the stage. But still, again, they didn't even know that the pizza parlor, they're going to become popular after that. Probably
Down in the moments, though, they were listening, but not like with the ears. They're listening, so they heard.
That's true. The way you put it, it doesn't sound like that. They well, here's that's when they started getting more and more offers to play at different venues. Garcia said that as they went around playing at gigs, clubs, bars, they all demanded the same type of music from them: short and fast stuff. Quote, short and fast stuff, meaning that's the kind of stuff that the people at the venues wanted to feel. They want to feel, without a doubt, what you guys were feeling when we were at Daytona.
Resonating.
They want to feel that upbeat song. When I listened to when I first listened to the song "Turn On Your Love Light" versus the Grateful Dead's rendition, the Grateful Dead's rendition, with respect to the original author. Sorry, with respect to the original author, the Grateful Dead was a way more upbeat and fun version. Which is, if you ever see the Blues Brothers sequel, Blues Brothers 2000, they play that same song very much in the style of the Grateful Dead. And they were always trying to play a little. They're trying to stretch out a little. They're trying to, quote, they were always improvising cosmically.
That's too cool.
That's Jerry Garcia's description of how they developed. It was all about meeting what the audience want, but at the same time, they wanted to experiment. They're always trying it out differently. They wanted to be wholesome, but also randomly and and appealing. In fact, Jefferson Airplane described the Grateful Dead as, quote, the spiritual advisor to the whole rock scene, and Jerry Garcia did not agree with it at all. He said that the Grateful Dead was not the spiritual advisor to the whole rock scene, that he disagreed with Jefferson Airplane. The way I see it, what exactly is the rock scene? Every style of music can either be seen as a protestation of the previous form or a development, or the protestation is a development. What would you say? Would you think the Grateful Dead was the spiritual advisor, or would you say they were a catalyst?
I mean, if I'm thinking about somebody who is in the industry and is doing all the things and is doing their own grand experiment, but then they making the whole thing work, and then they look over at at this other group that's really, really playing it loose. And it's like a reminder, maybe like, remember where you came from and what inspires you. And maybe that was what was being said, that they weren't like trying to go out and tell you, this is how you do it, this is how you think of it. They're just doing it real hard. So all the, maybe other bands that were locked into the grind and wanted to remember to, play it loose and why I love this and how to stay in the zone. Maybe they were talking about that.
I don't think that they're trying to aim to send out a message to be a pillar or a representative. From what I read of Jerry Garcia's interview, he was more like, I'll see where that takes me type of vibes. I see more reason in Jerry Garcia's denial that it's hard to, I'm sure Jefferson Airplane said that with respect. I would say that they meant that the Grateful Dead perhaps was one of the top cultural symbols of rock and roll. Its influence in the 60s and the 70s, without a doubt. You got the Doors, you got the Beatles, Pink Floyd, you got, you got Jefferson Airplane too, but you got Cream. That's what I was thinking of.
Randomness out of the era.
They all came out. You went from thing of the evolution in music. If we're to do it quickly, you went from Baroque to Rococo, from Rococo to Romantic, from Romantic to Modern, and from Modern you get to Postmodern. But the thing is that when modern music was at the rise, because Romanticism was all about was Beethoven, Schubert, Brahms, Schumann, Liszt, Mendelssohn, Tchaikovsky, and many others. And I'm sorry if I didn't mention your favorite, but if you like classical music, but it developed to modern music. You got Ravel, you've got Gershwin.
There's a radical Russian one. Tweak it a little bit and make it different.
Oh, there was Shostakovich was, I would say he was radical compared to classical. Shostakovich was definitely modern. Prokofiev, Stravinsky.
That's it.
There we go, Stravinsky. Yeah, he was definitely radical, the Rite of Spring. And so it's always a defiance of an old structure, and it sounds more radical, but it's normalized as we hear it more and more and more. At the same time, jazz was born. Right around when modern music was at its high, jazz, it was completely different from classical. In fact, its basis was jamming. And from jazz, to develop into rock and roll, especially after World War II. And I'm talking about Elvis rock and roll, and
Everly Brothers
rock and roll, Chuck Berry rock and roll, Bill Haley and the Comets rock and roll. And then you get to the 60s and you have the Beatles, even more extreme, Jefferson Airplane, the Doors, Grateful Dead. And then you just have a continuation of experiment as cultures change. The many dimensions of cultures include music. And that is why there can't be a singular identity. A singular identity is a good way to start something, but the truth of the matter is that nothing really has a singular identity. There are dimensions within an identity, but it's the combination of those dimensions that make up what one would think a singular identity. But there's so many aspects of it, you can't define the culture of the 1960s with one example. One example that says this example embodies everything.
Think about 2025. The whole music scene is hyper nuanced. Like so many just offshoots, and hybridizing and whatnot.
It is.
It's a big like peacock's tail, and a lot of there's a lot of music lovers and music creators, and it's a deep well now.
I mean, without a doubt, when people look back in the early 2000s, especially in the 2020s, it's going to be, in my opinion, Taylor Swift's name is going to be one of those giants, without a doubt. And just as once Aerosmith had its name decades before, every popular band, every popular group will become a label, a name tag, a label, a personality or representative of that culture. It becomes part of that dimension. Think of it like
the tapestry.
Tapestry. But yeah, even the tapestry, that it all consists, every member, every artist that contributed in that movement is a thread in that tapestry.
Have you heard of a guy, I think this is the name, Nils Fromm?
Yes. I heard of it. I haven't checked out his work, though.
I enjoy it all. It's cool.
What would you say, what was your best takeaway from him?
Oh, he was he'd taken his skill set to like a flow level, and he made it really fun for himself and his audiences, and and listen to the precision of tempo and dynamics is a whole nother layer, but just the whole thing was so like, if you're gonna watch it, if you're gonna pay money to go see a live show, it's super bang for buck because you get the full squirt. It's all just like, wow, this is different, and it's intense, and this is there's a passion and a highly evolved skill set layered with that heat.
Oh, without a doubt. And there is a huge influence in which art, and especially music, has on a population. Think about when The Rite of Spring came out. It caused a riot. Oh no, I won't say the music caused a riot. There were people who could not appreciate the music, and they reacted very negatively, and it caused a stir. That a riot happened because of a ballet.
Neat. That's so cool.
Yeah, it just sounded so fauvistic, so beastly, so completely radical in comparison to classical. It completely changed music to explore a depth of human expression of music that maybe it was once tried in an etude.
So what?
But
go
ahead.
They said that that it was just too much. It was too brash and vulgar and scary. Is that what?
Basically, there's one side that say this is not music. This is
cool.
The thing is not just the music itself, but the whole ballet. It was a 30-minute ballet, and it's about a Russian pagan sacrifice, and the sacrifice would dance to death for the gods, so that there would be a good harvest, a healthy spring for the next harvest, But it's Stravinsky's music, and if you watch Fantasia, Disney's Fantasia, the dinosaur cartoon is The Rite of Spring, just cut less than 30 minutes. It's a good rendition, but that was the Rite of Spring. In fact, Stravinsky was shown the cartoons by Walt Disney, and he saw that his music about a pagan sacrifice was going to be. The music's going to depict from the Big Bang to the death of the dinosaurs to the formation of the Earth that we know today. And Stravinsky saw all the cartoons. He saw the dinosaurs and the evolution, and he says, that's what I guess that's what I was trying to point out in my music. The fact that Stravinsky points that out, because he did once say, again, man, I need to find the source. He did say that he wanted to get to the depth of the human emotion, or the depth of the human nature, and you bring it out into music. Of course, it's going to cause a ruckus, especially when people are accustomed to listen to refined violins or average, classical music, and then suddenly you bring out harsh French horn blasts and rash cello and violin screeches.
Just like life.
Yeah, just like exactly that. It's like a reminder that we still bestial nature. That it's like a harsh reminder of the social contract that we are noble savages.
Dirty little hominids.
Yeah.
Right.
We're only living civilized just because we know that to resort to our baser instinct is against everybody's interests. And the Rite of Spring was like a harsh reminder of people that remember there's still something deep within us, and look what we can express it through art. So an artist, like you told me about there is like, when you play something to your audience, whatever kind of artist you are, there's going to be a reaction, and the reaction is going to be because of the art. There can be apathy, there can be exaltation, or there can just be, I mean, I don't know how often that a person who sees art has a violent, incredibly negative reaction or an aggressive reaction, but it has happened in history. It still happens today.
That's weird how art moves mass emotion. Like, like it's a weight. It's hard for anything to lift, move people, and it's like, it's intangible. It's music. It's in your ear hole.
But those very effects, that power of influence, the artist knows, where am I going to take my art? Because deep down, the artist knows that their art can trigger and their art can soothe. The Grateful Dead didn't have what Stravinsky influenced. It brought people together, not really divide them. Not saying that Stravinsky wanted to divide people. He wanted to present something new and yet pure in art. Grateful Dead did the same, but their music, it not only did it change and develop, but it also remained so popular that it continued to attract people. In fact, Jerry Garcia, he said on his guitar playing, he said, quote, that his guitar playing descended from barroom rock and roll to country guitar, comparing it to blues instrumental stuff that was happening in the late 50s, early 60s. That they departed from rock and blues in favor of stressed harmonies. In the end, yep, they were popular with the loud, with the fast and upbeat stuff. And in the end, they started to change to find a different form of less of the upbeat, fun singing and more of
vocal exploration
and also exploration of sound. Because in their late work, it's more jamming and more exploring tunes. It's more like, it reminds me of the passage of the young person who has the wild and energetic life as the young person, and as they get entering their emeritus years, they become more thoughtful and more explorative of their own thoughts and position in the world, much like the Grateful Dead's later work. It's, so
I see where you're coming from.
Is to see where you're coming from, as if they were drawing their own conclusions, which it's a great thing that they've done that, this Q's development, because people can say, I love the Grateful Dead in its earlier years and its later years, or I prefer the Grateful Dead in its later years and its earlier years. I think it was Jerry Garcia that said that they were at their peak in the 80s. I'm not sure because I was never there. But the thing is that...
I'm glad I was there. I'll say that, yeah.
Would you agree with Garcia that they were their best at... or if he said that they were their best at in the 80s?
I don't know how to put best on it because they're next level. So I just say that their effect, their vibe is undeniable, and it's it makes a lot of people feel something.
That's
in
true.
A peaceful, cool way, and it's an anomaly.
I was to say the least.
Lucky to be here, experience it.
The best things about anomalies is that they help us re-examine the whole structure in the first place, help us appreciate the essence of the structure when we notice an anomaly. When we notice that something's askew.
Or rare.
Exactly.
Super rare and super like need a mosquito. Look at all these different cool angles, and it's glowing, and everybody's, what? Captured.
You learn and you progress through mistakes. And sometimes mistakes are not even mistakes. Sometimes they're just unappreciated feedback. Well, it looks like we need to time to wrap this up. I just want to read you this one more passage.
Yeah, please.
Because this sums up everything about the Grateful. I mean, it was in the middle of the interview, but this basically sums up what they're about. He said, sorry. So he was asked a question about when they decided to stop doing blues stuff and the harder rock and roll stuff and instead going into stressed harmonies to change their rhythm, change their the way they've been playing things. He said, Garcia said, that was really the result of hanging out with Crosby and those guys. Just because they could sit down in any situation and pick up an acoustic guitar and it's instant music. I think that nothing really communicates like the human voice.
Yeah, that's what we were angling at, right?
Exactly, as you said.
Yeah.
It is really the ultimate instrument. I used to think of myself as a guitar player, but hearing singing and seeing it up close has kind of made me want to sing a lot. It just makes me want to do it. I don't really know what it is, and it's really satisfying to sing. I've always gotten off on a good singer. That's part of where our music wants to go. But it's record companies and the music business that's making that difficult. It should be possible for everybody to do everything, especially in music, where music can only get better when people get together in different combinations.
Doing it now.
But record companies want to be exclusive. They're getting looser and looser, and hopefully could get loose enough where everybody can do what they want. It would be ideal. And that basically sums up the essence. It's, if you want to stay true to your art, you first go where your heart tells you. See where your passion takes you. Yes, be mindful of your audience if you have an audience in mind. But again, what is it that the artist strives? What a patron or a company tells them? Or where their journey leads them? Where their passion leads them? Like a group of band players who get together and they experiment on different types of melodies, tunes, instruments, styles, whether it's Grateful Dead or Lo Presher, whether it is The Doors or Pink Floyd, whether it's Cream or Jefferson Airplane. In the end, art needs latitude, or else it's no longer art. It's just a commercial product, a commercialized product.
You just made me think of the AI latitude.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean,
weird to hot mix that in there.
First I was skeptical of AI, and I do have some justified skepticism, but it does help with the creativity, just like Logic does.
It is what it is, right?
It is what it is.
And we're still going to have fun creating.
Definitely. And that's the best part of this podcast. It's the best part of having the channel. Just put your stuff out there, see who likes it. And the number one thing is don't put it out there for approval. Put it out there just to put it out there. I remember
sharing is cool.
Sharing is cool. And appreciating is the bonus of it. I remember when the Impressionists or French artists got together and they thought of creating a community of artists. That all they do is create art, they sell the art, and they contribute the money to the community. That's where it gets problematic. But the idea of, artists...
A utilitarian kind of deal.
Yeah. It's artists getting together and see where their crafts take them. To know what else, much farther and how much more diverse can we be in our craft, and what else can we bring out. Imagine if we stopped with romanticism in music. We would never have known music by
Devo.
Even before, we
was just riffing.
We wouldn't have had Gershwin's Rhapsody in Blue. We wouldn't have had any jazz music. We wouldn't have had rock and roll. We wouldn't have had even the composers of most film soundtracks nowadays if we just stopped and say, okay, I think that's the best as we're going to go. it's the duty for the artist to keep on exploring, to not be limited to a certain standard, but more importantly, to put that standard out there and not. I'm sorry.
And you're part of the big part of the giant experiment. All of us, every sound, every emotion expressed or conveyed through the audio vibes.
No, exactly. Yeah, just to put, like I said, to put it out there and to see who likes it and who goes along with it.
Yeah, and you it's weird what it does when you hear all the different, the music when you're feeling it and it's new or different. It's a cool effect.
It is. We've so many bands to be grateful for that.
Yeah, I love the modern era. Whatever we're in, 2025, man, it's great for snacking on bands and create, different creators.
Even this itself is an art form. The fact that we just opened up points of discussion, and it's not just the music, but the intention of the artists themselves. To be the reminders that when you want to be an artist, you don't have to have a certain platform. You just know that you're about to go on a journey and see what matches you. And the Grateful Dead is a reminder of that. And that's why we should always be, grateful for the Grateful Dead.
Yes, well said.
So for that, we appreciate what they've done for music and for art.
Big time. Big time.
This is a social contrast. Thanks, Steve, once again. Next episode, we're going to be exploring the essence of creativity from a book by the great John Cleese.
That's going to be cool.
All right, great to see you. Hope you tune in for the next episode. Thank you for listening.
All right.
Have a good day.